Welcome, Louis. I'm speaking today with Louis Sanchez, a former member of the Mexican Village here in Dodge City. And this is October 20th, the year 2010. And we're just going to visit a little bit about some of what it was like living in the village. But first of all, Louis, can you tell me, when was your birthday?
My birthday was August the 19th, 1923.
Okay.
So I'm 87 years young.
87 years young.
Yeah.
Now, you were born in the village.
Right.
And so when did your parents, when did they come to Dodge City?
Well, I don't know exact date when my dad came over, but he came over in 1901. That is from Mexico. He was recruited by the Santa Fe. They were building new lines and maintaining what they had, and so they went to where he lived, which is Silao, Guanajuato, Mexico, and they recruited him and a bunch of his friends. He was just a young man, single man. He came over here, and originally he went to Wellington, Kansas. He came with an older man, with one of his friends, but he didn't really like it there, so he heard about Dodge City. So he decided to come to Dodge City to see what it was like. Well, he liked it here. And like I said, if you were married, you had a wife, then if you were fortunate enough, you could move in there. Well, my dad was a single man, so he had to live in a tent. Now, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think he sacrificed quite a bit for living in a tent, especially in the kind of summers we have here in Dodge. And the winters we have here in Dodge, it gets pretty hot in the summer, it gets pretty cold in the wintertime. So he sacrificed quite a bit. He was a young man, and after working several years here in town, why he went back to Silao, Guanajuato, married my mother, and then he decided to come back to the United States, and so he came over here. And he built a house. Now, most of the houses that were there were built out of discarded lumber that the railroad had thrown away. And so the men would hang on to them boards, then they would build a house. That's what our houses are built on, mostly used lumber that had been discarded from the railroad. Because some people wanted to know how many people lived there, and so I said, well, I can tell you exactly where everybody lived, where every house was, where everything was, and how many people lived there. Unfortunately, I don't have that information with me. And then later on, after the Santa Fe needed the space for their fuel oil tank, which is a big tank, they had to do away with three rows of houses that were there in the village. And most of them houses belonged to the railroad, so they could very well do that, and they removed a lot of the houses that were on the west side because they built a retaining wall all around the tank in case something should happen, that they should have a leak or something. So after that, the village became a U, a U, because there was a row on the north side, a row on the east side, and a row on the south side. But everything in between there was removed because the people, like I said, the railroad needed the space for their big fuel tank. A lot of the houses, maybe not a lot, a few of the houses were moved from there. They were moved north. People bought lots and they moved them north. A lot of them were dirt floors, so they couldn't be moved, so they just went in there and bulldozed them, and people had to go and find a place to stay. So,
what were your parents' names, Louis?
My dad's name was Soledad Sanchez, and my mother's name was Florentina Tovar. And of course, then when she married, the women always kept their middle name, so she became Florentina Tovar Sanchez.
And how many children?
There were 13 of us.
13.
That was about the average family at that time. I keep making the joke that we didn't have television at that time. They had to have something to do. Matter of fact, getting to television. Hell, it wasn't even invented when they came over. We never even owned a radio. Matter of fact, most of the village didn't have any electricity. We had what they call coal oil lamps. We used them for lighting, and we used a big potbelly stove for heating the place. We used a lot of the discarded railroad ties, chopped them up and used them there for fuel. And there was a gentleman that had a coal company there, pretty near right south of the depot, Cord Coal Company, I remember the name. And he had a name, a fellow named Rupert. I can't remember his other name. His name was Rupert, and he would deliver coal. He had a team of horses and an old wagon, and he'd load up the coal and then take it over to the village. And so if you were fortunate that you had the money, you could buy some coal. But mostly we used railroad ties, discarded railroad ties for heating the place up in the wintertime. And they used it my mother used it for cooking. And since we didn't have electricity, she had to spend her time in there cooking for, well, there was 13 kids. And most of the time there was only about 10 kids. And but my dad and her, so that was at least 12 eating all the time, you might say. So she cooked, about the biggest part of the day. And when she wasn't cooking, she was washing clothes by hand. We had to go get the water. It was about 2 blocks away. We had to go get it in pails for cooking, for washing clothes, for bathing, or whatever. Or if you wanted to grow a garden, you had to go get the water with the pail for a long time. Later on, we got modern and we got water in the house, but that was quite a while afterwards. Mm-hmm. I remember the first time that I listened to a radio. This gentleman, Olivares, let's see, what was his name? Anyway, his last name was Olivares, and he bought a radio, and he had probably a dozen batteries underneath there. Since we didn't have electricity, he operated that radio with batteries, and he came over to my dad's and asked me one day if he could put a post in our yard. And my dad said, well, yeah, what do you need a post for? He said, well, I've got a radio, and I have to put, at that time they called them aerials. Now they call them antennas. But at that time they called them aerials. And he said, I'd like to have your permission to put a post in your yard, and because I want to run a copper wire from my yard, from the farthest corner of my yard to your yard, and then I'll use this as an aerial for my radio so I can get different stations. So my dad said, go ahead. So once in a while he would invite us over to come and visit to the radio. We thought that was really something else. But anyway,